want to bring you some breaking news now from India. A passenger jet has crashed in the western city of Ahmedabad. Now, these are the latest images from social media we're getting.
It was 1:38 p.m. on June 12, 2025, when Flight 171 lifted off from Ahmedabad's Sardar Patel Airport, bound for London. For 30 seconds, the Boeing 787-8 Dreamliner climbed normally, and then it didn't. Alarms blared in the cockpit, the engines suddenly sputtered, and the jet lurched into a frantic descent. Passengers braced for impact even as the plane spiraled perilously low over a city neighborhood. Seconds later, a fireball erupted among the buildings of a medical college campus. In that instant, 242 lives were ripped in two.
242 people on this crash, on this aircraft. Nobody on that aircraft has survived. This is official news now coming in.
One world in the sky, one shredded by wreckage. What had turned a routine afternoon into a disaster? Emergency teams sprang into action within moments. India's National Disaster Response Force, Air Force crews, and hundreds of volunteers swarmed the crash site. Firefighters waded through thick smoke, extinguishing flames that raged for over an hour. Nearby roads and runways were cordoned off, grounding flights and keeping bystanders at a distance. As darkness fell, the nation watched with bated breath. Live video showed burning wreckage, and families waited, praying for any sign of survivors. By nightfall, the Dreamliner lay in ruins across the BJ Medical College campus. Personal belongings and luggage were strewn among blackened wreckage. First responders sifted through the twisted metal, searching desperately for survivors. In the end, 241 people aboard had lost their lives.
But first to the plane tragedy in India, where 241 people died. But one man aboard miraculously survived, seen right here bloodied but alive.
Families returning from weddings, children on holiday, and even a former Gujarat chief minister. On the ground, another 28 people were as burning debris rained down. A tail section was embedded in a building's roof, a grim testament to the impact. The scene was apocalyptic, a tangle of fire, twisted metal, and human loss. Amid the devastation, one human miracle stood out. From the wreckage emerged a sole survivor, 40-year-old Briton Vishwas Kumar Romesh, seated near an emergency exit. By some extraordinary twist of fate, Romesh had jumped from the failing aircraft just seconds before it hit the ground. Unconscious and gravely injured, he was hauled from the debris and rushed to a nearby hospital. Doctors worked through the night to save him, and against all odds, he clung to life. In stark contrast, a young woman named Bhumi Chauhan discovered fate's cruelty another way. She had arrived at the airport only 10 minutes late and missed the flight. Watching the flames on television later, she whispered a trembling word of thanks. Her life had been spared by a mere 10 minutes and the mercy of chance. This was the first ever fatal crash of Boeing's modern 787 Dreamliner, a jet long celebrated for its engineering finesse and near-perfect safety record. Until now, no Dreamliner had ever come down like this. Boeing and engine maker GE immediately vowed full cooperation with investigators. India's civil aviation authorities, aided by teams from the U.S. National Transportation Safety Board and the UK's Air Accidents Investigation Branch, flooded the site. By nightfall, one of Flight 171's black boxes had been retrieved from the wreckage. The other remained lost amid the debris. Preliminary flight data hinted at a tragic anomaly. The aircraft appeared to lose thrust almost immediately after takeoff. Investigators now faced a race against time, listening to the cockpit voice recorder and poring over every maintenance log to understand exactly what went wrong. That evening, the weight of the tragedy drew global attention. Prime Minister Narendra Modi flew to Ahmedabad, meeting the lone survivor and the injured, and promised that rescue operations would continue at war-footing pace.
India's Prime Minister has met the sole survivor of the plane crash which killed 241 of its passengers and dozens of bystanders. One of the black boxes has been recovered.
Across the globe, condolences poured in. British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, having lost citizens on board, called the scenes absolutely devastating. King Charles III and Queen Camilla sent heartfelt sympathies to India's people. Even as the world grieved, Air India's owner, the Tata Group, announced a relief package. Roughly 1 crore rupees, about $118,000 per victim, plus full medical care for the injured. Hotlines and support centers were set up to aid hundreds of frantic relatives waiting for news. Yet despite all these efforts, one fundamental question remained unanswered. What caused this airliner to fall from the sky? Beyond the physical wreckage, the crash tore at the fabric of communities. Entire families vanished in an instant. Schools mourned missing teachers and students, and neighborhoods found themselves torn apart. Forensic teams worked through the night on charred remains. Hospitals became centers of grief as much as medicine. Doctors treated not only wounds, but shattered spirits. In waiting rooms, relatives clutched each other and cried. The air was heavy with disbelief and sorrow. Grief turned quickly into demanding questions. How could this happen to India's flagship carrier? Even before the smoke cleared, the nation's eyes turned to Air India's boardrooms. Once a symbol of national pride, and now reborn under Tata's ownership, the airline suddenly faced a crisis of credibility. Executives answered frenzied questions about maintenance checks, pilot training, and safety protocols. Maintenance records, engine test logs, and crew rosters came under intense scrutiny. Legal action was already looming. Families of victims promised to seek answers in court, and foreign governments were preparing claims under international aviation law. Every policy and procedure was examined for lapses. For Air India, this was a crucible. The carrier's very reputation hung in the balance. Across Asia and beyond, airlines and regulators took note. Flight 171 became part of a worrying pattern. India had seen deadly air crashes in 2010 and 2020.
Early morning, an Air India Express aircraft overshot the runway at Mangalore, 158 passengers flying from Dubai. The pain and grief for their families is not numbed.
And South Korea just last year. And many now demanded sweeping reforms. Aviation authorities pledged to re-examine safety protocols, certification standards, and pre-flight inspections for all wide-body aircraft. As ground teams began clearing the site, the work of identification and investigation had only just begun. Long after the rescue helicopters had gone, families still waited for answers. Yet even in this darkness, there was an unexpected spark: the survival of Vishwash Kumar Romesh. In his hospital bed, he became a symbol of resilience, a human link between the jet's skyward dreams and the earthbound tragedy that followed. His story reminded everyone that even in catastrophe, life can cling on against the odds. Already, training programs are being updated worldwide. Pilots will face new simulator scenarios modeling the kind of cascading failures that allegedly occurred on Flight 171. Dual engine troubles, cockpit alarms at rotation, that horrifying nose-diving pitch-down. India's Aviation Board is reviewing whether certification standards should be strengthened for flying cutting-edge aircraft like the Dreamliner. For now, the crash is becoming a case study in human factors. If a jet's computers and autopilot were working properly, did they override the crew's actions? Or did the pilots defer too much trust to the machine? Meanwhile, air traffic controllers are cooperating in analysis. Transcripts of final communications are being parsed for any missed calls or miscommunications during those fateful seconds. Every detail, from tower instructions to cockpit audio, will be revisited for clues. The answers hidden in those recordings could reshape how pilots and controllers train for emergencies. Time has a way of turning tragedy into legacy. Flight 171's victims have already become more than names on a list. They are catalysts for change. In Ahmedabad, a memorial may rise. In aviation classrooms, a revised training scenario. Each June 12th will bring remembrance and, one hopes, renewed resolve. Above all, this catastrophe etched a solemn truth into the public consciousness. Aviation is a marvel of engineering and a fragile ecosystem at once. Every design choice, every maintenance check, every single cockpit procedure is one link in a chain. Small oversights can indeed have catastrophic consequences. The crash of AI-171 shattered more than metal and circuitry. It shattered our assumptions. Only through systemic, sustained effort can those assumptions be rebuilt, stronger and wiser, in honor of the lives lost that day. Safety, it seems, is never guaranteed. It must be earned anew with each takeoff. The story of Flight 171 belongs to all of us now. If this deep dive resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more. Share your thoughts in the comments. What unanswered question haunts you most about this tragedy? We want to hear from you. Thank you for listening, and as always, stay safe out there.